Is this like that dad joke you told me the other day and I like really could
That was
not?
the best dad joke ever. You guys want to hear the dad joke? I'm not saying I'm attractive, but when I'm in the bathroom and I take my clothes off, I turn the shower on.
Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero and I'm a licensed therapist.
I'm Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but what I am is an individual who has gone on every single one of the activities and dates that happened in this episode in Hawaii, which makes me feel as though perhaps just a little bit, a smidgen, that I am qualified to talk about why most of these dates were terrible and why this was a boring plotting episode.
Okay. Interesting fun fact though. About you. I've never been to the Big Island, so I cannot relate.
Wait, we've been to Hawaii together.
Yeah, twice.
You know what the really crazy thing is? So for those of you out there who may remember, we had our honeymoon in Maui, and we ended up going back to Maui for our 10-year anniversary. When we stayed in Maui the first time, we actually stayed at the Fairmont.
Oh, I was going to talk about this when we got into Devon's date.
Oh yeah, no, I want to talk about it now because this is a thing. So the Fairmont, when we were young and, poor, it was like, we thought it was an amazing resort. It's right next to the Four Seasons and the whole thing. It's like over on the Walea side of Maui. And it was like, we had a great time. We went back 10 years later. What a shithole.
Well, I will say what I was going to flag for this episode was that my bias against the Fairmont is so strong that I could not really give my all into watching the Devon date at all. And it's not because the Fairmont as a brand was a shithole. It's because when we went there for our 10-year anniversary and that it was a very expensive 2 weeks that we were going to spend at the resort, they did not even think to tell us that the entire resort would be under construction and would be completely disruptive the entire time. No. They just let us come there, drop all that money and not disclose that at all, not listen on their website, not listen anywhere. I just happened to go on TripAdvisor that morning, to, of course, scope out where I wanted to eat later that day. And that's how I found out. And I found that to be the most shady, unethical part of a travel experience that we've had.
Well, we don't want to be all negative, right? So we ended up spending about, 20 minutes walking around the resort. And then we're like, we just have to go. We went to that cool pizza place up on the hill. And we had a piece of pizza. And then we decided, let's just go see what availability is at the other resorts. And so we ended up doing that. And we did go back to the Fairmont like an hour and a half later and said to them, not really happy, want to know, asked to speak to a manager to go ahead and get whatever refund they were willing to give us so we could go to a different resort, and didn't require a manager. They just flat out right away just said, no big deal. You just tell us if you want a refund, tell us what hotel you're going to. As soon as you're set with another resort, we'll refund you right away. So they did the right thing in the end. I want to give the Fairmont credit for doing the right thing in the end. It just was super shitty that we had to get there and be completely shell-shocked by the disaster. But hey, we ended up spending, 11 days at the Four Seasons, which was 5 times more expensive. But if you haven't been to the Four Seasons in Maui, you are missing out.
Yeah, worth the hype.
Worth the hype. It's actually where White Lotus season 1 was filmed. Yeah.
Well, we are not a travel podcast.
We are not a travel, but we should be a travel podcast.
But what we are doing here tonight is we're talking about episode 8 of The Bachelorette, season 21, Gen Trans season, also known as Fantasy Suite / Overnights. We're going to get into the 3 different overnights, the, Devon plot that's ensuing, all sorts of things. But before we do, please be sure to hit that like button at the bottom of this video and hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. At the time of this recording, I think we're at 915 subscribers. Help us get to 1,000. Getting to 1,000 does really, really great things for us in our channel and helps us give you a better show from a YouTube standpoint. So any support that you can give us by way of a subscribe is so appreciated.
And please also hit that bell icon so that you're alerted anytime we post new content to the channel.
All right.
Opening thoughts. What were yours?
I other other than the Fairmont situation,
Very distracting.
I was honestly a little bored.
Super bored.
I was on my phone a lot, so my notes aren't as
comprehensive
as they usually are. Like I'm usually ready to like pull quotes, and I don't know, for whatever reason, just was a little bored. I'm finding the Marcus Jen situation really exhausting, and we're going to get to it. I think it's obviously worth talking about. And my suspicions about the Devin connection that I've been sharing with you, I don't know how much I've shared on the pod, like have really been confirmed. So I feel like I have a lot of thoughts, but at the same time, I found the episode to be a little bit of a snooze fest.
Yeah, I don't think I've picked up my phone and been this distracted during an episode, just not because there was something interesting to distract me, because I was just finding myself just so bored. We were 40 minutes in, and it had felt like we should be 2 hours in already. It was just, it just dragged. I felt like we didn't get any real new information. The only thing that salvaged the episode, even a small amount, was Devin, finally having some insecurity. And I'm not sure I can even call it insecurity. I think I can just call it finally him listening to his gut, and picking up on what has been kind of apparent throughout the entire season. I'm exhausted by all the plots. I found all 3 of the dates to go exactly how we expected them to go. Not a lot of really anything going on that was exciting. So, for me, it was an episode where it just confirmed all of our biases for the most part. I think it confirmed that Jen is still not ready to identify what makes a good partner for her. And
Well, and so here's the thing. Before you go off in the comments and say, if you hate the show so much, why are you watching it? I want to be clear, like, while we're being a little ranty right now, this is an episode that I find both frustrating, but also so fascinating, because I feel like it mirrored real life dating and relationships, like at a certain point, in a way that I find like so juicy to really talk about. And so that's what I really love about this show, that despite the fact that we have our 15th helicopter ride of the season and we are living in this fantasy, there are these threads of reality, of things that I know as a therapist I hear about all the time, as just, a person who's had friends that are dating, or seeing them navigate through that, seeing myself mirrored in Jen and even some of these men. Like, that's what I really appreciated about the show. Not so much Jonathan, but on the Devin and Marcus end of things, I was like, okay, this is in a lot of ways highly relatable.
Yeah, I mean, you're being more generous than I am. I would just sit there and say that me not actually being a fan of the show makes it easier for me to be unbiased about my opinions.
Okay. All right. So
I'm not saying I'm not a fan of the show. I'm saying I'm not a fan of the show. Right?
What?
I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of the show.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I'm not a fan of the show.
You're saying the same thing.
No, there's context. There's accents. You got to pay attention to the accents. I'm learning Spanish. I understand how important accents are in a word. But no, so the reality is, at the end of the day, I do think that the show is interesting and fascinating for analytical purposes. And I think that there's a lot that can be gleaned from this show and shows like it in watching behavioral patterns and watching, in this particular episode, seeing Marcus and Jen in particular really just falling into patterns here that are not helping either one of them and are ultimately really wasting each of their time. And they're just falling into patterns, and I think it's fascinating to look at that and talk through it. So
for sure.
Should we start off with good date, bad date?
Yeah. How do we want to do this?
Well, it's very simple. All right. We get a helicopter ride. You guys can go back and watch the other 15 episodes where we talk about helicopters. This was in particular even a worse helicopter ride because they had the stupid shared microphone. It's like your ABC. Give them the headset with the microphone.
Yeah.
Like this is bad. It also made the microphone like the certain dialogue like less authentic.
Yeah.
Because now they're like, it's like you took the time to like move the microphone to your mouth to express this feeling, which made it seem more performative. So it was the fact that they had some time when they landed on the beach and stuff like that, and they did have some alone time on ground together means, at worst, it's always, it's going to bottom out at a C minus, but this was a C minus for me.
Yeah, I don't think I just, as you said, rewind and then subtract half a grade for me because of the microphone. And again, their destination was beautiful, a waterfall, but it was quick. It was a quick turnaround.
Yeah. And then with Jonathan, the hell was Jonathan's date? I don't even know.
Walked around and
the marketplace
ate sweets.
Again, we've done that. Like, I don't understand why production is giving the same thing.
I don't mind them doing that in a different location every time.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, we've already done this marketplace one twice at least. We did the group date
I don't mind it.
Where Devin pulled her for the ice cream, and then we did it with Jeremy in Seattle. Mm-hmm. So we've done the helicopter 4 times. We've done this market at least 3 times. Come on, you've got like 48 seasons of this franchise to pull on,
What I'll say is I don't mind like a cultural date, but I was with Jonathan a little. I'm not a sweet girly, so like having a date where all I need to eat is sweets, like it's too much for me. I would have liked a little bit more diversity of cuisine, in my opinion. But I'm never gonna knock a kind of like, let's try the food or have experiences that are native to the state or the area that we are in. So yeah,
look, I'm still giving it a B. Mm-hmm. But it's I'm bored of the fact that we've gotten his date now 3 times.
Unique date though was Marcus's date, which was an evening boat ride followed by snorkeling with the manta rays. Yep. And then also their dinner / overnight location was the coolest as well.
Well, they had the I mean, we should maybe we just talk about them separately here. Fantasy suites, all 3 obviously go to the fantasy suites. The room that Devin got, shithole. The room that Jonathan
was very
got,
cheesy.
It was like there was nothing unique or interesting or romantic about it.
That could have been a hotel anywhere.
Anywhere. Jonathan's was good.
Yeah.
Right. Like I wouldn't like if I'm going there.
It was more romantic.
Yeah,
intimate.
I wouldn't be disappointed if I was stuck in that room for a week, right? Whereas Devin's, I'd be like, what did I pay for?
Yeah.
And then Marcus's was literally an open air shoebox.
It was very small. It was cute, though.
You know what? It kind of reminded me of the cabana beds at the resort we go to in Mexico.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it reminded me of our first apartment, our bedroom, which was.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Not really a bedroom.
It was not really. It was an open air loft. Yeah. No. I was thinking more like if you just think about the little cabana beds with the little sheets around the corners. It felt like it was about that size.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
What I would like, again, clearly there's not a lot to talk about in these dates. I want to talk about the order of fantasy suites for a second and get your opinion as to what spot, what number, 1, 2, or 3 in the fantasy suite order do you think is like
best
first
to worst?
Yeah, best to worst.
Well, I don't actually think that this is there isn't really an opinion to give. There's just like an objectively correct answer here. Like psychologically speaking, you always want to go last because of recency bias. Recency bias is one of the 16 biases, the 10 cognitive and 6 emotional biases. Recency bias is one of the most powerful of them all. And we see that demonstrated throughout all kinds of studies. So you definitely want to go last, just in general, always. But also, Jen or the lead, has had the opportunity with the others already, which means that there's additional information that you can be privy to and you can ascertain that the others were unable to get because events had not transpired yet.
So you can compare.
I.e., I can ask the lead, hey, did you sleep with the other 2? And it's no longer, do you plan on sleeping with the other 2? It was, did you sleep with the other 2? And that answer may matter to me, right? Did you tell them that you love them? Which is very relevant this episode. And now these questions may not necessarily matter to you, in that situation. But the point is that they have happened. They are no longer theoretical. What might she do? Or, what might the lead have done? It's now a matter of, are you going to be honest if I ask you, Are you going to get defensive? Are you going to say it's none of my business? Like, and these are important things to one, you have the ability to ask if you care about something, and two, you have the ability to see how somebody's going to respond, to see if their response is going to match up to what you care about. On top of adding recency bias, there's absolutely no question in my mind that the objectively correct order is, last to first, in reverse order is the order you want to be in.
Okay.
I'd never want to be first in one of these.
Yeah. It's.
Am I wrong?
I don't know that I would have said, like, objectively speaking, the last is the best.
I sold it though, didn't I?
I mean, you made a compelling argument. I think it depends on who it is. In watching the show for years, again, they're really strategic about who they put where, right? Like, it made a lot of sense that they would put Devin first, because then he has all of this time to sit and think about her being with these other men. We frequently see a more insecure woman go last, actually, because she's doing the opposite, thinking about the other women on the date, and particularly if her relationship to sex is maybe a little bit different than the other women's relationship to sex, right? And so, like, I'm thinking about Susie Evans in Clayton season. I'm thinking about Maddie from Peter Weber season, like having the idea that, oh, these other women are potentially having an intimate moment with the person that I like might get engaged to, is making me feel some type of way. Like, and so I think on either end, you can be having those worries, those insecurities that we see Devin have.
Yeah.
So yes, recency bias is at play, but like either way, first or last, you're contending with like a lot of waiting.
Sure. Yeah.
So middle might be best.
No. No, don't. I do not subscribe to middle or first being best.
Okay.
But hey,
yeah. I mean, let us know in the comments what you think in terms of order. And do you think it matters Bachelor versus Bachelorette? I don't know. Like, do you think men and women have a different view or experience?
I think that
like men are more territorial, maybe more competitive.
No, men are more out of sight, out of mind. And so I think recency bias tends to, and I don't have a study to prove this. I'd have to look it up, but I would, my guess would be that because men tend to be more object oriented, and we could just look at, in Bachelor seasons, the one who gets the first impression rose on the first date tends to not win, where they do tend to win like 50% of the time with bachelorettes. I think it's in that same vein of kind of psychology or sort of psychological behavior. Whereas I think going last, if you're a woman on a Bachelor season, is far more valuable than going last on a Bachelorette season. I don't have studies to show that, but that would be my guess.
Interesting. Okay.
Disagree? Agree?
No, I don't know. I have to think about it. I know the Bachelor Data Instagram account put up some data this afternoon about like order of fantasy suites and where the winner was, and there's no pattern at all whatsoever.
No, well, because at the end of the day, it's not the person who it's not the lead who's dictating the order. It's
right.
production.
Yeah.
And their agenda is vastly different than their agenda is best show. Their agenda is not
best love story.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah. So sticking on the theme of the fantasy suites, let's assume you are going last, or even if not, it doesn't matter. Whatever order it is, the lead gets intimate. Very intimate, like deeply intimate, with one or more of the other finalists. Deal breaker for you?
I don't know that I necessarily want to answer that question for me personally. Because everyone has a different relationship to sex. I guess, well, maybe I will answer that then personally. I think for me, with my relationship to sex and the value that I place on it in a relationship, it would make me really uncomfortable to know that the person that I could potentially marry had sex with one or two other people before, like alongside me, right before I were to get married. I don't think that I would be able to move on from that very quickly. So I don't know. I feel like that's a lot to overcome. If we're talking about other types of intimacy, that too might be a little like bit more challenging for me, but it's one of those things that I would have liked to have had a conversation about beforehand. And I think that's where things tend to get fumbled in this episode. But for me personally, it would be really difficult because of what my individual relationship with sex is.
Yeah, I'm completely agree. Not shocking, obviously, since we're married. It'd be pretty much a hard pass for me. I would move on.
Is that something that you would communicate ahead of time? Like if you were one of these guys?
That's a great question. So here's the thing. It's the interesting thing about this show is that there's no monogamy. Mm-hmm. There's no
expectation of monogamy.
Yeah. You're literally going in a matter of, 8 weeks, we'll call it. You are going from strangers to getting down on one knee. And at no point in time were you ever even exclusive. Mm-hmm. And that's a weird situation to be in. And since you're not exclusive, you don't really have the right to, to expect that somebody is not going to get intimate with somebody else. That being said, these guys are a week away from getting down on one knee. And I don't really care at that point about whether or not we've been exclusive. If somebody has slept with somebody else 1 week before I propose to them, that tells me that they're not committed to me. So it's just not it's not for me. It's and I get it. Like, hey, some people might have different opinions about that. That's perfectly fine. But for me, like, I can't have my future wife sleeping with somebody, 7 days before I'm proposing to her. That's.
Well, this is where, like, I think on this show, we haven't really hit on it that much with this season, but like often Bachelorette, we see a lot of double standard, right? In terms of dates that are had or conversations that are had or not had. And this is definitely more of a conversation on a Bachelor season where we hear kind of a post-mortem about like essentially about decisions the Bachelor made and people's reactions to them. We saw none of that happen here. And I find that to be really interesting. I don't know what to make of that. Who knows? It could have just been an edit. But
kind of like when you get the boxer brief football matches on the guys, but you could never do like a mud wrestling with the girls.
Yes, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like when these conversations are had, they're really tricky and they can get really sticky because we have seen leads have sex with other contestants, and then the one remaining is like, listen, like I didn't. And kind of is like, all right, like I hear that you had sex with these other people. Like I would have hoped that if you knew it was going to be me, that you would have not had sex with those people. If you were that sure it was me, kind of thing. And then the lead would say something like, well, if you felt that way, like why didn't you share that with me? So like they get into a little this dialogue, and then I've heard some other dialogue around it be like, I know that you're keeping our relationship separate. I want you to explore your individual relationships with people. And if part of exploring those relationships is physical, like I want you to go and do what you feel like you need to do. And it might not make me totally comfortable. Like it does sound a little bit like an ultimatum in some way, like depending on how it's framed or phrased. And so I think that's where it can get really tricky. When Catherine and I had recapped this show, that was one of the things that we often talked about is how to be clear about what your boundaries are, or rather like how to be clear about your relationship to sex and physical intimacy. And so maybe it doesn't need to be, hey, I'd be really uncomfortable if you had sex with the other two women, and I was still in consideration of being proposed to. I think it would more be like, listen, sex holds a lot of meaning to me. I know myself, and I know that once I have sex with someone, that emotions are really going to like get involved for me. I don't feel comfortable doing that until I know it's just us or something like that. Like then the lead can make whatever decision that they're going to make. I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities for communication just around, again, relationship to sex and physical intimacy.
Yeah. So you mentioned it coming across as an ultimatum when it's really not. I think it's really important for people to understand there's a big difference between setting your standard and setting your identifying your values,
Mhm.
right, and expressing what your value systems are. And when you state what your value systems are, like that's not an ultimatum. That's simply a matter of we are only compatible if we share some of these core values and most of these core values, and it's okay if we don't. And I think that when it comes across poor in communication, oftentimes it's because it does come across more as like, if you do this, I am out. When the reality, the proper way to say this is, as you said, this is important to me. This is how I view it. This is my value system. It's okay if you don't share that value system, but if you don't share that value system, we're probably just not a match, and that's okay. But if you approach it more from that angle, I think oftentimes it doesn't come across as much as a ultimatum, if you will, right?
Right. Well, and I think that's where the first person in the fantasy suite order kind of gets the advantage, because if they've not talked about it the week before, they're the one that can set the tone or influence the way that the rest of the week goes. So going back to which order is best, I don't know.
Well, but that's just at that point a game theory. Like the problem with that is while it's true from a game theory perspective that you have first mover advantage, the downside is that this isn't really a game if you're there for the right reasons, right? And the right reasons, you're either the right match or you're not the right match. And what you decide to do should not actually dictate what 2 and 3 do.
Yeah.
Because they're not actually engaged in the game. We know that that's not really true. Plenty of people go on the show not for the right reasons, and as a result, there was a game theory aspect to it. But
yeah, and I think again it brings up other good questions in relationships and in dating: is how soon is too soon to bring up matters of physical intimacy and sex? Like would it have been appropriate, for example, like they just finished Hometowns and Jen is, again, they're on their, benches and talking about next steps and falling in love. Like, would that have been the time to say, hey, I know you're making a decision about fantasy suites. I know what that can mean. This is where I am. Like, when's the right time? And again, this is something that comes up in so many of my sessions around, again, sex specifically, but let's just generally physical intimacy is sometimes it feels like the opportunity to have those conversations isn't until you're in the moment, just like what's happening here, where like there was no real prelude to discussing this until they're like, hey, do you want to go to the fantasy suite?
Well, I think in real life that is true, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, on this show, oh no, we're following a very distinct script and plot line. We know what's coming up.
I'm more saying that like this is just similar to real life. It's reasonable that like Jen wouldn't have known where Jonathan or Marcus stood and Devin until the night where they're sort of making this decision.
Well, I also think it's difficult. You're on a TV show. We are living in an era where there are double standards that are rampant. And I can tell you, if I was on national TV, I would definitely not want to bring up any of these topics because I don't know what edit I'm going to get.
Sure.
If they need a villain edit, they'll chop up my words and make me sound like some, chauvinist or whatever. Like, and so I can imagine all three of them basically saying like, I have questions, but you know what? I'm not going to bring it up because there's no chance. There's a strong chance I'm going to get a bad edit.
Sure, it might have been something that they talked about on the overnight when the cameras were off.
Sure, yeah. All right, we got one more topic to discuss before we actually get into the boring events of the episode. Right? We talked about the order. Now let's talk about content. What is the one question? If there's one piece of information, one question that you, with the cameras off, you need to ask.
This might sound really shallow, but like I want to know about income. I want to know about credit score. I want to know about assets. I want to know and not from a.
Give me your cash flow statement, your balance sheet, and your income statement.
What kind of future are we going to put together?
Very practical.
It's practical. Yeah, practical.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
That I think I'd want to know like the unsexy things.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my immediate thought. Even though I prepped this question, I didn't really have an answer, but go ahead.
I have a bunch of unsexy ones. Mine are less practical because I'm the one who does all the practical stuff. So I just know that like I'll handle all of that nonsense. A couple thoughts come to mind. Like one, ones that I think are interesting, not because the answer matters, but because the explanation of the answer. That's what I really want to get to. I want to ask questions where I gain a lot of information, but it's not necessarily the information they think I'm getting. So a great one is, who did you vote for in the last presidential election, and what was your justification and reasoning?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter whether they said candidate A or candidate B. That doesn't matter. It's why. Mm-hmm. Did you do it because of one particular policy? Did you do it because of a litany of policies? Did you have no idea and you just went off vibes? Did you not vote at all? Why didn't you vote,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it just you've never voted and you just completely, disinterested in politics? Do you not think it matters? Like a question like that, where yes, I'm going to learn a little bit about your values and your ideology, but I'm also going to learn about your, quite frankly, your engagement level
Mm-hmm.
with the wider world. We're going to find out a little bit more about how you think about things, policy prescriptions and things like that. If you did vote and you were basing your vote based on actual policy positions and not just on things. And the key here is that, and this is obviously the politics one is a little bit of a hot button issue, especially in 2024. But like questions like this, where like whether you voted Democrat or Republican, that doesn't actually matter. That's the least important part of the answer. It's the entire narrative journey that we're going to take on how you made the decision to get there. And if your decision is yay big, then we got a problem, because it means that we're probably not compatible, because what we care about and what we're thinking about on a day-to-day basis is just different, right? But if you've got a reason, even if your reason position is I didn't vote and here's a bunch of reasons why, it's okay. Yeah, great. So it would be a question like that. I probably would try to prep one up that wasn't necessarily the last vote in the presidential election to keep it a little less hot buttoned. But I try and think of a question with that can take us on a similar narrative journey.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me about you. And I think it's a relevant question. I mean, again, you're very, as you often remind us, like very values driven, and that's one way to learn about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we get into like the actual show?
Yeah, I mean, now that we've talked about all the cool stuff, I think we can just plow right through all this. So let's start with Devin's date. He did exactly what Devin does. Said everything right. Showered her with compliments. She accepted all these compliments because that is what she wants. She demonstrated clearly that she doesn't really like Devin. She just likes the way Devin makes her feel. The date itself was fine. We did the whole take the bottle of champagne to the 400-foot waterfall. That's a great date. I got pictures of it. I'm not going to show them because it's the fattest I ever was, and I'm not wearing a shirt, and I'm very embarrassed by the photos. But it was a great date, and yeah, it was. It was. Oh my God, I look terrible in those pictures. But you know what? It was a great time. We didn't get to take a helicopter though. Not on that time. We actually hiked. I hiked with a bottle of champagne like 3 miles up into the mountains of where the seven pools are, the 7 sacred pools, whatever that national park is. I forget the name of it.
You have to be nicer to yourself.
Oh, I'm awesome. I can acknowledge flaws in myself while also thinking I'm the shit. Yeah. It's like that comedian said, when he was talking about 50 Cent, he's like, yeah, I'm the whole dollar.
God, the dad jokes tonight. Yeah, I mean, listen, I was really feeling for Devin. We do open with a cold open of Devin talking to Jesse about his feelings, about feeling kind of insecure, feeling like he's giving a lot and not really getting a lot in return. And we see it. He's being so expressive with Jen. And Jen is she's not as far in with Devin as she is with the other two, which is, wild in a lot of ways.
I think it's very telling that she's trying to force it with Marcus and Jonathan, 2 guys that are not really emotionally available. And the guy who is emotionally available and is showering her and checks every box, she's just can't get there.
Well, she and Marcus really parallel each other here in this date. And I thought it was really interesting that the Devin date and the Marcus date were bookended, because the way that Devin is showing up for Jen is the way that Jen shows up for Marcus. And the way that Jen keeps saying, like, I think I'm just self-sabotaging with Devin because it's such a good thing. I'm not used to this. I'm not sure I'm worthy of it. I don't know how to recognize a good thing when I see it, yada, yada. And so she's sort of like, is it that I can't get there with Devin, or is this my own self-sabotage preventing me from happiness? Mm-hmm. And then again, at the end of the episode, we see Marcus in a similar position. Am I just tricking myself into not having feelings for this girl because I'm scared, or am I trying to force feelings that aren't there? They're having the same exact internal tension there. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've said to you about Devin over the last couple of weeks, is like, I don't know that she's really into Devin. Like, I wonder if, because Devin has been so expressive, so consistent, if like Devin just feels like a safe pick, an easy pick. Like, does she really like him, or does she like the idea of him, or the way, as you said, the way that he makes her feel? And that's what I'm really cautious about for Devin. Devin has great intuition, great insight, great self-awareness. He can feel that. And
we've said he is great in terms of social awareness and social insight. Phenomenal. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And you see it in this episode.
Yeah, you do. And it was like crushing to watch his intuition be very, very clearly spot on,
dead
just validated, affirmed by what we were seeing tonight. It was sad. And again, throughout the episode, we hear him start and then continue on a spiral around, I'm in love with her. I will be heartbroken if she tells someone else she loves them. I keep giving and giving. And I'm not really getting anything in return. I don't feel like I'm the one. I feel like I'm one of. He says that a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. And so he's really, really struggling. And this is where it's, again, one of the more difficult things about being a contestant on this show is that you are expected to constantly be vulnerable and open and expressive with the promise that you are not going to get that in return. Yeah. And it's a hard position to be in. I can completely empathize with how Devin is feeling and why he's spiraling a bit.
Yeah. Now, do you think that Devin doesn't spiral if his intuition is not going? Like, we think he's dead on intuition wise. We think that
is this intuition or is it anxiety?
Yeah, and it's very clear. Like, to us at least, we believe it's intuition. We think that like Jen is just not into him for whatever reason, right? And she's trying to make it work because he does check all the boxes, and he's feeling that. And if Jen actually was into him, he's not spiraling because his good intuition is pinging off of her actually liking him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a really good question. How do I know what's my intuition, and how do I know what's anxiety? And again, we are only operating on what is presented and portrayed to us on an edited TV show. And so it's very possible that they are feeding us this narrative because it works for some drama. And for all we know, Jen was really fully in on Devin, and we're just not seeing that come through. So I just want to always put that caveat there. Based on what we're seeing, this seems like very clear intuition. Like which is creating anxiety. It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg here? Like I think his intuition is creating the anxiety, rather than like him just having this like anxious catastrophizing experience.
Can I give you my foolproof, Chris approved method for determining whether or not something is intuition versus anxiety?
Sure.
Basically, if you do any thinking about why you're having a hard time, really, right? As the first step along the path, if you look at the first step along the path, if it's thinking about something, then it's anxiety. If you feel it, when you say feel it in the gut, there's a reason why we say feel it in the gut. You actually do physically feel it in your gut when something's wrong. You get that just feeling way down that bubbles up. And it's not something that you're consciously thinking of. It's just a feeling you're getting. That's intuition.
Yeah. It's like you listen to a podcast I did on this at one point.
Oh, yes. Was I on that podcast?
No. Oh. Yeah, I would totally agree with that anxiety exists in our thoughts, whereas intuition is grounded in our feeling. To your point, having a gut reaction, a gut feeling, the reason that we give that so much credibility, the reason that we feel so strongly about that is because our gut actually is referred to as our second brain. It's where most of our like knowledge essentially rests. It's our enteric nervous system. So it's an entirely separate nervous system from our brain. They communicate all of the time, but our first feeling is often in our gut before it even reaches up to our brain. And so our gut is actually really powerful and pretty smart. So yeah, when something goes to our second brain, we need to pay attention to it.
And is that why oftentimes there's a change in your hunger level when you're going through something emotional?
It could be
Like losing your appetite?
well, well. So the thing is that when we are dealing with something more emotional and more stressful, our central nervous system, our cerebral brain, has to go to minimize the threat. And so we'll send all of its resources to minimizing that threat, addressing that stress. And that means all other functions, specifically digestion, are secondary, are not a priority anymore. And so that's why typically someone that has a lot of stress, or especially like an acute stressor, or lives in chronic stress like we all do, often has gut-related issues. It's because the resources are just being deployed elsewhere.
This is like when Dr. House smashes his own hand to stop himself from feeling the jonesing from his withdrawal from addiction.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Basically, your brain only handles the most acute pain it's suffering.
Yep. That's spot on.
Yeah. Look at that. I know things. I'm people that know things.
So going back to Devin, we see him in the background of this episode that, I don't know how much we need to revisit that, but we see that very much.
But from the pure date perspective, he did what Devin does. There's not a lot to talk about here. He nailed it. He did exactly everything we expect of him. He gave the best toast of any of the guys. He said all the right things. He checked all the boxes. She was smiling. She was happy the entire time. You can't really levy any major criticism in terms of like, what could he have done better? Nothing that I saw.
No, I mean, from Jen's perspective, he could have withheld emotion.
Yeah.
Could have not been expressive. I don't know.
Yeah. But that wouldn't be true and authentic to who he is.
Yeah.
So,
and we talked about attachment seasons a lot back in golden days and BIP days. But this is one thing that Jen is doing right now, or is exemplifying right now, is her anxious attachment and her reaction to a securely attached person. And yeah, granted, Devin is acting a little bit anxiously right now, but I wouldn't say he has a more anxiously attached system.
He's a stable attachment guy, right?
He seems again, portrayed on the show, a more securely attached individual. And so oftentimes people that have more anxious attachments or avoidant attachments, but specifically anxious attachments, will see a securely attached person and think, oh, they're boring. That they are magnetized by a more avoidantly attached person, because those two together feed the cycle. We see her so attracted to physically and emotionally Marcus and Jonathan, two guys that kind of like feed this hunger that she has, feed this insecurity that she has. It really couples well with an anxiously attached person, where she's not yet ready to be in a securely attached relationship or with a securely attached person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's fantastic insight.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of Jonathan.
Yeah. This was definitely the most boring of the 3 dates. I mean, I like Jonathan, but like, what is there even to talk about here? I mean, it was
Jonathan's on a strict diet, which, you know what, I have to say,
good for him.
Good for him. I like when I see a fit person and I understand why they're fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you're a disciplined dude. You are getting stressed about eating donuts. Okay, I get it. I hope you have some YOLO days and all of that stuff. But there's a part of that I can appreciate. Like, okay, you work really hard for the body that you have. I can appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one of those dates where it's like, I know they're having fun out there, but like, are they actually compatible? Like,
no.
Will Jonathan be able to go on these? Like, Jen enjoys like having cocktails or like doing these food type dates and all of that stuff. And of course we see and hear that Jen is active, but like, is that a couple that could really be compatible?
We've said this many times. They're just not compatible. They're two very nice people. They're two very attractive people. I'm sure they would make beautiful babies. The reality, though, is that they're just not compatible. I don't think it's necessarily a value systems problem. It's a just interest. Now, I do think that it's really important for people to have their own independent interests. You and I actually, and I do think that people get really hung up on this concept where like, oh, we have to have like interests in common. Like we're both artsy and we both want to like, we both like games. We both like, it's like, I actually don't put a lot of value in that. I actually think that having shared hobbies is maybe like the least important thing. And in fact, I think if your hobbies overlap too much, it's actually detrimental to the relationship. You and I have almost no hobbies in common, like very little, right, in common. And we work very well together. That being said, there's a difference between, like enjoying hobbies together and things that will fundamentally bring you in conflict, right? One of you liking to go on food tours and the other one being like on a strict diet, that's probably going to come into tension and conflict, right? Things like that. One of you is a homebody and one of you likes to go out all the time, probably going to put you into conflict, right? Like these are
lifestyle differences.
They're lifestyle, yeah.
I guess it's like I still don't really know enough about him. And we did have this opportunity tonight to learn a little bit more about him. And even Jen went into this date saying she wants to know more about how he grew up and about family and things like that. And this is where I'm like feeling like I want to both validate Jen, but also criticize Jen a little bit. And again, we're only getting the edit.
Mm-hmm.
We go into this date where she wants to learn more about him, and she ends up sharing more about herself.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think what she shared about herself was incredibly meaningful.
I thought it was meaningful, and actually it came across as some of the most genuine and
Yes.
vulnerable she's been all season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting you bring that up because I had the same thing where it did feel like what she said and what she did were two completely different things. And my question to you about that is that her? It felt to me like with Jonathan and Marcus, she is just trying to force it. She knows that she likes these guys and she may not really understand why, but like it just feels like she's trying to force both of these relationships. And is this sort of like some defensive mechanism where she's not really getting what she needs from Jonathan, so she's just trying to force it with her own demonstration of vulnerability?
I mean, I don't, forcing it is a strong word. Last week in regard to Devin, I had said he's a really good example of vulnerability begets vulnerability. And I can imagine her wanting to ease the vulnerability for Jonathan by opening up herself. Like if I do it, maybe that will make him feel more comfortable. And we did get a little bit of that. Like we learned about Jonathan's family more than we did even last week. And, through Jen sharing her story. So I don't know if it's like, I guess from one point of view, yeah, forcing it is what she's doing, particularly on the Marcus side of things. But I think that this is her demonstration of really wanting to make it work, really wanting to meet them where they're at. But she's doing too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't really have much else to say about this date, unless you do.
No,
I like their again, more waterfalls.
Yeah.
Love all that, but beyond that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what they both talked about in terms of their cultural identity and what it was like for Jen specifically growing up within a predominantly white environment and what that made her feel about herself and what that made her feel about her family was so important, and also an experience that's shared by a lot of people that don't look like us, or who grow up in an environment where they don't feel like there's representation. So I think that was an important dialogue that happened. And I also thought it was really interesting to learn about Jonathan's background. I didn't realize that he was biracial. I didn't quite put it together last week when we were meeting his family. That didn't really seem to be part of his family's narrative. Yes. Yeah. And I liked that he was able to say, despite the fact that I'm half white and half black, I was raised by a white mom and she instilled a lot of confidence in me. And that's something that if we're bringing in a family, we're going to have essentially a mixed race kid. And I know that I had that and I can do that for them. And I liked that. And I liked that it was a good dialogue, especially in an environment where we all we are so divided, and that it feels like we can't have a conversation unless we have the exact same opinion. I liked that there was some element of highlighting, like, no, difference is what makes us interesting. Like, having differences of opinion is what can also make for an interesting conversation. And so, like, I liked that there was that element of this conversation had.
Yeah. Well, I thought that Jonathan nailed the response.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it couldn't have been a better response, and in some ways a more teed up perfect for him.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you there. Yes, we learned a little bit. Yes, Jen was more, expressive and more vulnerable, but just holistically, when you step back from this entire date, do I feel as though that the two of them are more compatible? No, I do not. Do I feel as though the two of them got closer to falling in love with one another? No, I do not. Do I feel as though these two are going to end up together? No, I do not.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I agree that there was some interesting stuff that in the dialogue, but in terms of actually getting them moving them forward, I thought it was very blah.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And yet the way that she engaged with Jonathan was, she seemed way more into him than she did Devin.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yes, which is problematic, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that for multiple weeks now, we've been hearing over and over and over again the inner monologues of Jonathan and Marcus, and both of them have serious doubts. Mm-hmm. Marcus in particular, but Jonathan too. And we've talked about it in past episodes, and these guys are not sure they can get there. They're definitely not there now. And somehow they're two of the top three.
Yeah.
And what does that say about Jen's picker, right? What is that saying about her picker? That she has perhaps two of the most emotionally unavailable guys, along with the most emotionally available guy, perhaps. And she clearly is not going to pick the guy who's giving her everything that she says she wants and checks off all the boxes. And she's clearly not going to pick him. Mm-hmm. And she's trying to force it with the two emotionally unavailable. I think that is a piece of information and a piece of data that Jen needs to go and sit down with a journal or a therapist or somebody and work out a little bit of those feelings, because I don't think it bodes well for her future relationship here. However this season goes.
I don't disagree. Yeah. Well, speaking of Marcus, let's move on to him. Marcus and Jesse are golfing.
Yep.
And during this golf chat, Marcus is sharing that he thinks that Jen is ahead of him and his feelings, mm-hmm. which is very interesting considering he's not the lead. And one of his things that he says is like, I have all this uncertainty, and one of the things that would help me get some clarity is essentially I want to know what she sees in me. And then we see Jesse kind of turn to him and say, you know, you're a big inspiration, right? Like, he's Marcus. And when I saw that part of the dialogue, it's like, gosh, you really need some therapy, man.
Yeah.
Really need some therapy. Mm-hmm. But then he goes on to say that,
by the way, Jesse had some tough conversations in this episode. And
he did.
Excellent.
He did a great job.
Jesse did fantastic this episode. I thought in particular, the Devin conversation later, in particular, like, I don't know how he navigated that as well as he did.
I know. I was looking to see if he had a little earpiece to see if someone was like feeding him the right responses. But yeah, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Spoiler, he's getting my rose.
Oh God, I have to come up with a different one. He was getting my rose. Okay, go ahead.
But anyway, so Marcus, as I referenced before, is saying, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, do I actually really like this person? I'm just scared, or maybe I just don't have feelings.
Spoiler: you're a week away from getting down on one knee and getting an engagement or proposing to somebody. You probably need to know.
Juxtapose that to Jen, who then comes on the camera in her ITM and says, I am in love with Marcus. I've been feeling it for a few weeks now. And it's like, whoa, girl.
Well, okay, so let's back up for a second here, because I want to make a few things abundantly clear. Okay. Marcus is awesome. Marcus is a catch. Marcus is somebody that you should love. In fact, more people should love somebody like Marcus, at least for what we see portrayed on screen.
That's going to be a really important caveat. What we see portrayed on screen.
What we see portrayed on screen. I don't know anything about any of their real lives. I don't know. I don't care. We're only talking about what's on screen. This is the type of person that you want. That being said, just because he exhibits all the qualities that you should want and you should fall in love with, doesn't necessarily mean that they are always in a place. And this is where we have the problem, right? Is that, he is not ready to love. He's got some work to do still. And he has some emotional baggage that he has to unpack, right? Before he's going to be ready. And he's got to do that first. But when he finally gets there, he should have his pick of the litter, because he is somebody that, like, any guy would want their sister to date. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's how I'll put it. Mm-hmm. If I had sisters or any of my female friends, I would look at a guy like Marcus and say, that's the type of guy that you want to be with.
You've said that. You've maintained that since episode 1. I think that's even like how you might have characterized it back then. And the thing that I find so very interesting, and it's again, like, what is it that we're not seeing? Because the way that Jen describes him is stable. He makes me feel stable. He makes me feel grounded. He makes me feel at peace. And how can that be true when he is not forthcoming and so with emotions about you? Not he's been very forthcoming with emotions. I don't want to. He's about you and about your relationship. What about that creates stability? Is it stability and groundedness, or is it a sense of familiarity in terms of being with someone that is emotionally unavailable?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, look, I love Marcus.
I'm sure that he is a sturdy guy, right? Like all of that stuff.
I mean, he's a military guy. I would expect him to be calm under pressure. I would expect him to be stable, right? I would expect him to be loyal. Those are 3 things I expect from those who have served in the military, especially somebody with as decorated a career as he has had. So, yes, but that also does not necessarily mean that you are emotionally available. And that is the problem here. So I don't fault Jen for loving Marcus. But just because you love somebody and just because, on paper he should be the pick, doesn't mean that he's ready for that. And that's the problem we have here, is that he's not ready to go there yet.
But this is, again, I'm not trying to tell anyone how to feel, but this is where I'm like, do you know what love is?
Jen or fair. No, I don't think she has any idea what love is.
And again, like, I think this is where feelings are so complicated. What she feels for him, like, is probably a mixture of, sure, attraction, strong but also confusion, anxiety, like some butterflies because of excitement, some fucking stomach flips because what the heck is going on. And so I think that all of these intense emotions are probably creating something that feels as intense as love, but how can you, like, please riddle me that. How can you feel something like love for someone that you don't share any foundation with from an emotional intimacy perspective?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. You actually cannot fall in love in a show like this, because love is a verb. Love are the actions that we take. You demonstrate love every single day of your life by making sacrifices and making choices to put somebody else first.
Do you think Devin is displaying love? Well,
here's the problem is, on this show, you can't. In a show like this, you're not making any sacrifices. Somebody's planning all the dates for you. You don't have funds to worry about. Right. Somebody else is paying for everything. You're like, your job is to sit in a house and think about this person. So it's actually impossible for you to demonstrate love. The closest you can get, and I'm fucking shocked I'm even going to say this, is Gary letting what's her face call her daughter on her daughter's wedding day. That's about as close as you get, and that I got some problems with. Right? What was her name? We pronounced her name wrong half the season.
No,
it was not. It was. It doesn't matter. But yeah. Anyway, like, so you can't actually fall in love on this show because you can't, and because love is a verb and love are actions, you cannot engage in the actions that demonstrate love because you're never in a situation in this show such that you're in a situation to perform those actions. So, bit of a long-winded answer to say, no, Devin is not demonstrating love here either, because like what he's doing, while it's compassionate, empathetic, while he's doing all the right things to demonstrate that if given the opportunity, he would demonstrate love to her, right? And he's certainly, of the three, the one that you say, well, he's doing the closest approximation that one could do on a show like this. I would still argue that he is still not actually engaging in the acts of love.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so going to the night portion of Marcus's date.
Second week in a row, I'm like, he's self-eliminating, right?
Well, or Jen, you're going to walk him out now, right?
It was bizarre. And then I'm like, wait, and she's like, and you can tell, like, I thought, like, okay, he's doing the guy thing. And guys do this all the time. Like, guys don't want to be the bad guy. They don't want to break up the girl because it just, the way society runs, when there's a breakup that happens, it's the guy is usually going to be the one at fault. And so if the guy also does the breakup, forget it. He's got no shot of getting a good edit ever.
He's trying to get dumped.
Right? So guys do this all the time where they try to get dumped, because at least if the girl dumps you, it was her choice. And it is what it is, right? And that's so classic. And that's what it felt like he was trying to do here. Like, let me say everything. You could see her shut down. You could see her, but
well, full disclosure, when Marcus started talking, Chris hit a button on the remote. And so we lost a few seconds of that initial part of the conversation. But from what I gathered, Marcus they were debriefing about the hometown date. And Marcus, it sounded like, was starting to share essentially his debate about whether or not he was going to send himself home. He was feeling insecure because he was the last rose and yada, yada. And that's when you see Jen shut down. I'm like, okay, he's going to he keeps talking, keeps digging a deeper hole and saying, like,
I even said at one point, like, well, we figured out who's not going to the fantasy suites.
Yeah, no. And then he does this long, like, beat around the bush thing. I don't even know what he was trying to say, but basically he was saying, like, I only want to get engaged once. I want to, because of the way that I grew up, like, I really want to do family right. I want to do marriage right. I want to be certain. I'm not certain. You deserve someone that's going to be certain. And then he
spent 45 minutes in a long soliloquy, basically saying, I'm not there. You should send me home because, like, I'm not there.
Jen responds and
Please
says,
don't go. Please don't go.
I just feel like I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't tell you that I'm in love with you, actually.
Yep.
Okay. We can debate whether or not she needed to say that. But this was the moment where I was just like, you two are acting so selfishly. Dump one another, please. Like, Marcus, it is now unkind to be here. You know she wants to get engaged next week. In days. You know that. You know that you're not going to be ready. You don't even know how he'd refer to it last week as a chasm between liking someone and being in love, or falling in love and being in love. Really? Like, this is so unfair. You know Agreed. You're not going to get there. And so, like, why stay around? And then Jen, have a little self-respect, which he ends up saying, I want you to, she ends up saying, I want you to be comfortable. I want you to be confident in us. I'll meet you where you're at. Like, I see you're trying, like, as long as you keep trying. And it's like, oh my God, what about you?
And what about the other two guys that you're now just kind of blatantly disrespecting?
Well, you're clearly not into, if you're begging him to stay, essentially, then that means that she's not full in on either one of these two. Otherwise she would have walked him out.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, being Devin or Jonathan watching this back.
If you get picked, right, and you watch this back, yeah, this is a gut punch.
And, on the show, every time something like this happens, they say, oh, hey, like, you don't know how fast things move in Bachelor world. And, a lot can happen across a couple of days. And so, yeah, I might have been feeling this on Tuesday, but by the time Friday came along, things
Yeah.
had totally
Blah 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 bullshit. Blah 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 more bullshit. Yeah.
But it's just this was a hard watch. It was hard on so many levels. How can we go, Jen, from you saying to Devin on night one of the fantasy suites, I think I finally know what I deserve, and then I just my heart broke for her. Like I at this like I'm beyond frustrated. I feel so sad for her. Like so sad for the way that she views herself. So sad that she really truly demonstrates how undeserving she thinks she is of love in all of these choices that she's making. That's what she's showing us. That's what she's showing herself. And I feel really sad for that. I was also truly watching her. I was watching my like 16, 17, 18-year-old self with my first boyfriend who I loved him so much. And all I wanted him to do was love me back. And the way that I twisted and contorted myself to trying to be patient or wait around or be who I thought he wanted me to be. I wanted him to pick me, all of that insecure shit that you do when you're a teenage girl. And it just never felt good. It always felt like it came at such a cost to myself and my self-respect. And as I look at myself, 20 some odd years later, I have a lot of sympathy for that younger version of myself, but I'm seeing that in Jen. And granted, she's somewhere in the middle between my age now and my age in high school. So like maybe she hasn't outgrown that yet, but I just, my teenage self recognizes Jen a lot. And I just feel sad. I want to reframe selfish because I don't want you to misunderstand to misunderstand what I mean by that. Selfish, self-interested, around self-preservation. That's what I'm talking about here. Marcus doesn't want to feel bad. Neither does Jen. And in their own way, they are trying to do whatever they feel like they need to do in order to get their needs met. And that oftentimes makes us choose self-interested actions. Marcus here feels bad, feels unsure. He's getting an opportunity to stay. Yeah, why wouldn't he? He also doesn't want to be the bad guy. He should self-eliminate. He doesn't. He just had this woman say that she loves him. What's he supposed to do in his mind, right? Like I'm saying you should self-eliminate. That is the harder thing to do. It's the right thing to do. It's the harder thing to do. So you make the selfish choice to not be the bad guy. Okay. And Jen here too. She's making a selfish, self-interested choice to, I don't know, try to make this breathe another day. Even though it really is doing her a great disservice in the long run. Like that's what I mean by selfish.
Sounds pretty selfish to me.
Yeah. Okay. You take over. I'm hogging the mic tonight.
No, I don't really have much more to add. I like Marcus. I like Jen. Neither one of them are ready to get married. Neither one of them are ready for engagements. Both of them have, I think, some work to do in very different ways. I don't think that if one, I don't think that he's getting down on one knee and proposing a week from now. And yeah, I think Jen has put herself into this really weird corner because I'm not convinced Jonathan is getting down on one knee either, which means you've got two of your three guys are not proposing. And certainly the third guy would propose, but you're not interested in him. So like when we talked about in the premiere episodes, in the first couple episodes, do we think that this is going to end an engagement? And we both said, no, I don't think that we're ending in like an engagement. Certainly not. It's not ending in a marriage. It'll probably end in like an engagement, but it's not ending in a marriage. I feel like that was very prophetic. And I think a lot of people in the community, I heard that people were all kind of in the same boat that we were in. And I feel very strongly about that now, just looking at who the top three are. Because I don't think she's picking Devin at this point. And he's the only one of the three that I think is definitely getting down on one knee.
See, I think that she does pick Devin.
Oh, you do?
For all the wrong reasons, or for like what appear to be the right reasons.
So it's possible that she just realizes these other two, maybe her family. You know what this episode is? This episode is a great sales pitch for parental arranged marriages, right? Because you even see it in the teaser for next week, where her family's like, you've got a history of emotionally unavailable people. Maybe don't pick those guys. Maybe pick the emotionally available one, right? And there's a great example of like, like, I just don't think that her picker is working properly
Well,
at the
her
moment.
picker is more emotional than it is practical.
Yeah.
And not that it shouldn't be one or the other. We talk about this all the time. It should be a combination of the two, somewhere in the middle, wise-minded from a DBT perspective.
But if you were to line up those 25 guys and you were to go to her family and say, pick the top 3, are these going to be the top 3? Absolutely not, right? And I'm just looking at these top 3, and I like Devin, and I like Marcus, and I like them all independently. But quite frankly, I don't see a long-term match for Jen in this room.
I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see what happens.
My big question is, are we going to have a BIP situation where literally we get, we get the engagement, and then it's been 3 months have passed since the wrapping of the episode, and they're already broken up by, like, we get the 3 days after finale. Yep, we already broke up.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the high. That's
so the finale is next week,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Terrible day of the week to run a finale, by the way.
Very inconvenient for us.
Yeah.
Do you think that she is still with whoever she picks?
Look, it'll be short-lived. Like, they're not going to make it 6 months.
Mm-hmm. So you think they might still be together after the final rose?
Yeah.
But that it's
short-lived. Yeah. Based on the 3 guys and what I've seen of Jen, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
No.
If it's Devin she picked and Devin's watching this back,
I think Devin, if she picks Devin and Devin watches this back, and all of his, and he realizes that he really was, she's flat out said, I am not in love with Devin. I am in love with Marcus. When Devin realizes that he was second fiddle, I think that is going to be a problem for him to get over.
He literally, that was his whole.
That's his whole spiral. I think it's going to be hard for him to get over that, and I don't blame him. Right? I don't blame him.
Well, we do leave on a cliffhanger with Devin.
Mm-hmm.
Devin, has another chat with Jesse and basically says, like, I did take note of this quote. He says, I keep giving and she is growing from that, but I'm withering away.
His insight this episode was just fantastic.
We're huge fans, Devin.
Yeah, really fantastic. And I'm happy you asked about my rose this week.
Love it. My thorn this week.
I hated to see that. So shall we move on to Rose and Thorn?
Yes.
All right. You already let the cat out of the bag on your rose, so just go ahead and give it to us.
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, it's Jesse from a multifaceted perspective.
So good.
We saw a lot of him this episode. Love that. Love when Jesse really comes to work. Love that. And I thought the way that he showed up in those conversations was an A+.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
and your thorn?
My thorn, it's honestly got to be the sweets date. Followed closely by the men's footwear in this.
Wait. The sweets date? You meaning the actual sweets themselves?
A whole date of sweets. My stomach hurt just.
Oh, sweets. SWEET.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking fancy sweets.
Oh,
SUITE.
No. Jonathan's date.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
Sorry. Jonathan's date.
I wasn't the only one who got confused, right?
No,
somebody out there. Just tell me I wasn't the only.
It didn't occur to me. They're the English language, man.
It's a funny language. Yes.
Yeah. So Jonathan's date.
Yeah.
It hurt my stomach. I just could not. It's like, could not do it.
Yeah.
Too many sweets.
I am going to disagree with you. That's my rose. Since you took my Jesse rose, is like a date of ice cream and sweets. Which again we talk about, like, shared values, shared lifestyle, but shared hobbies. Right? Those are 3 different things on 3 different tiers. You are a savory individual. Yeah. I am a sweet individual.
Listen, in every relationship, there's a person who likes the crust, and there's a person who likes the pizza, and those people find each other.
Yeah.
And we're that couple. I'm a crust, you're a pizza, and that's how it works. Savory, sweet.
Yeah.
We're compatible. It just fits.
How many tiramisus did I eat this past weekend?
A lot.
It was, oh my God, so good. Yeah.
More than me.
Oh my God, so good.
I ate a lot of pizza though.
You ate a lot of pizza. I ate a lot of pizza. You ate a lot of crust. I ate a lot of pepperoni.
What's your thorn?
Oh, I mean, I feel like it's too cliche to just sit there and say, like, the pacing of this, but the pacing was brutal this episode. I
It
just felt like
dragged.
it just dragged, and it really just wasn't compelling until you got to the last second half of the Marcus date and the final spiral out with Devin. Other than that, it was poorly paced episode. It dragged on. It was not interesting. I found myself very distracted. Picked up my phone more than I picked up my phone for every other show combined. It was in my mind pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about, but I felt the same.
Well, the problem is that these are three good guys,
Yeah.
right? At the end of the day, like they're not assholes. They're good guys. They're respectable guys. They're stand-up guys, at least as far as we're seeing them portrayed. There's not a lot of drama between them. So they don't have a lot of fights to go back and forth on, and so like they're just not much there. Also, like, yeah, that's it.
Max, now you decide that it's time? Now you're awake? Now that it's time to go to bed?
So should we get out of here?
Yes. So just recording schedule.
So tonight is Monday night. We are recording directly after the episode. This is going to drop on Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday evening, we are getting the Men Tell All, which, it looks like we're going to get some Sam M confrontations potentially. We cannot record Tuesday night because you are on a flight. So we will be recording Wednesday evening, which means that episode will drop that recap on probably Thursday afternoon. Then next week, it is not a Monday night episode. The finale is on Tuesday. I didn't check to see. Is it 3 hours?
3 hours.
3 hours, which means we are not recording Tuesday night, which we can't anyways because I'm on a flight Tuesday night. So we will be recording our recap on that on Wednesday, and that should drop on probably Thursday afternoon. And then we're going to get the breakup announcements probably a week after that. So we'll stay tuned, and we'll do an emergency podcast as soon as we get the
I want to put good vibes out there, of course, for all of these people. What we will also be doing between next week and Jones season is talking about Jones men and previews to Jones season before it starts.
Yes, we will be doing a Jones man. We got Kelsey's dad is in the mix, right? Mm-hmm. Is that true? Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So anyway, so that is the upcoming recording schedule. We hope to see you all there. Don't forget that most of you are not subscribed, but I see the analytics. I know that you keep watching over and over every week. So hit that subscribe button.
Yes, thank you. And if you want to see what's going on with us between now and next episode, check us out on Instagram at Reactivity TV. You can follow me on Instagram at Amy Albero LCSW. You can follow our company Revive at Revive CFW. Send us emails with feedback, suggestions. We love hearing from you. You can email us at reactivitytv@wishingyouwell.com or just drop some feedback, suggestions. Engage with us in the comments. We love seeing you there. And again, hit that subscribe button too. But we will see you later this week. Bye.
See ya.